state I woke up in.
Yeah.
Physical state, but the.
Right.
Well, mental state. We were in Indiana.
I'm hoping we don't go to.
Yeah.
No.
I don't think we should lose him.
She come down there since August first.
Okay.
Good. I saw some pictures online. Looked like there's, I guess, a normal amount.
36 people, a
Which
little
is
bit more than,
A little bit normal.
yeah.
2
Yeah,
seconds.
we had to move them over to SC or to the media
Media
center.
center.
We usually like to use
Oh,
this
okay.
room because it's just a little bit more informal for some
Sure.
reason instead of the tables and,
Got it.
you know, but we had to.
Is that a professional technique?
Yeah, just thinking that.
That's pretty
And it did.
impressive.
That's
That's like the guy who taught me you hold your
I'm
car keys
sorry,
up to your
Glenn.
head like
Oh.
this and it
I,
makes the
you
range.
know, I had to fiddle.
It's just, I don't
I
understand.
watched him do it. It's like, oh, that's
And I had-
impressive. Huh?
Yeah.
Makes it longer.
Makes it longer evidently somehow.
Does it only have billing? Is he
I
like? for-
don't know.
The range of what? I'm missing
Like when
something.
you're unlocked a car.
Yeah.
You hold it up to your head, it makes the range. I don't know if I believe the science in that,
Close.
but
I don't know if I'd want that point. Yeah, I really
Well,
want any more of those.
I was gonna
things.
say, you know, I hold this up to my head, so.
And-
Alright.
Do you wanna follow yet?
Do we have presentations?
There are.
Yes,
So-
that's right. Margaret had a ton of those in the room. Right. Should have looked up that.
Other glass things.
Like what?
Labor Day.
Hey.
There's a-
Oh,
By the way, there's Labor Day Saturday.
When we look here, see that church?
Yeah.
That's in Croatia. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I'm gonna say the farm.
Thanks, Steve.
We were there.
Really? No, pretty.
Perhaps.
And there's a guy,
That
The
may
first,
you know, like
Yeah.
a.
It'd be the first.
possibly,
Plus,
yeah.
Yeah, and possibly
that
July.
picture.
Oh, really?
Since they're selling meat, remember the old drink from the Middle Ages?
The orange and stuff.
They,
I don't know. Yeah.
really good.
Hey,
My friends buy a bottle of it every once in a while.
Oh, really?
I was like, okay, so I don't care. It'll be my first time trying to transplant, but there's some other ones that. We can swim it up, so
Sweet.
we would try and.
Okay, slap them out there, see what happens.
But very goodness, it doesn't.
Yeah, probably. Like. Get ready to do it.
Yeah. No, these are my dollar bed right now, so. It's all of them. They're not all over.
When did you go there?
Croats.
But the ones that I did transfer to church.
Right after I retired from,
Red.
so it's been a while.
Put on a tree for red.
We went the first week in November,
Late because they.
and the people on the bus,
So the roots
the bus
established.
were veterans. They go on several vacations a year. They always make sure to go first week in November because you have four race, but you have October.
United.
Yeah.
That's too.
Yeah, right.
Oh, the only other thing I
I
saw
asked
was
every-
you're gonna put in the first reel.
What's your favorite
Policies.
vacation?
These are little.
Then I don't think I change it.
Everyone's got the fatness in their.
I did, I added them today,
Okay, so
Um,
well, because the
this
Soviets
afternoon,
had
but the
control,
one
so
thing
you get to
is
see things that were not.
Did you get told like
the
the?
way
so
that
many
they
stuff?
ran,
Yeah.
It was
their
really
her
cool.
husband
Oh,
passed
that's
away.
awesome.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to go
So
to.
there's a camp that we were having done, I might just do.
I
that.
love looking at
I
Yeah.
might
it.
do them.
Email and fire.
The ones that either if you prefer living just
So we can at
travel,
least
do
get
all
them
that just.
forward.
I do just like, I'm moving my daughter to college and.
Go to the old stands, you have, you know, I mean, it's a little more dangerous.
That's
Like
what I
Thursday.
say, it's
Um,
the same.
yep.
Right.
That's, I think that's everywhere now, but.
There's the collective farm.
All right, folks. If you, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Sam Aleniel,
Here.
David Schrader,
Here.
Dan Boltner,
Here.
Craig Wortman,
Here.
Mike Higgins, Lori Holland,
Here.
Fred Yant.
Here.
Diana Johnson.
Here.
Tina Johnson. Here.
All right, everybody join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, Do this.
With the
Very much. Well, I guess I did those in reverse order. I didn't have my glasses on, sorry, folks. Um. So I'm hoping this doesn't have to go 2 hours, but I wanted to give us time to talk, as we can be a chatty bunch. We have had a lot of discussion. I had discussion in the community. I had discussion from staff. We've had discussion amongst ourselves about the staffing issue and talked to Jared about this. And one of the things is, and we're talking subs, we're talking paras, we're talking contract staff, we're talking staff. And Jared suggested having an itinerant staff meeting to just kind of just talk about this. I'm not looking put this together for us to make any board action on this. That is not the purpose of this. This is meeting is purely for the discovery purposes, to have Margaret and Jason provide us information on the steps that we're taking for any of our staffing issues, what we're looking forward as we move forward into the next year. And I know this is a lot of this gets covered in HR, but you know, a lot of folks are going to miss that. So I wanted to just get us all together. And so we're confident talking when we get questions and when the community says, hey, what are we doing? What is this staff issue? You know, I know that I have in the last year, I've had a staffer who would email me every morning with a list of how many people that they had out sick and, you know, how many subs that they didn't have and that sort of thing. So I thought, just let's get everybody together. Let's talk about this. Let's look at this because this is one of the bigger issues we have, and just kind of answer questions and then we move forward. So, all right. So Jason and Margaret, I'm going to let you have the floor here and proceed as you will.
Okay. So, in talking with Jared about the plan for this evening, he had asked me to pull together some data about our current sub situation and to talk a little bit about what we've observed. And so, included in board docs is a summary of that, the 2024 sub bill rates, January to March, the last PDF one,
Okay,
which shows that if you look across, I mean, if we can pull organizational wide data as well, but we know just from what we see that fill rates vary from school to school. And we knew that on some days, you know, a couple of days, quite a bit, actually, the high school was frequently reporting 100% fill rates. And we know that there has been concerns expressed to all of our administrative team regarding middle school fill rates, which have not been as high. And so when the middle school fill rates aren't, when the jobs aren't filled, they have actually a rotation schedule that has been implemented that is, you know, it's a rolling rotation schedule, and it's considered, it's required. I mean, people have to participate. Now, they always take volunteers first, but they're not always able to meet all of the volunteers aren't sufficient to meet the vacancies, and so then that's when they resort to the mandatory rotation. Staff are paid for that, but what we know is that there's a level of dissatisfaction with giving up their prep period because it takes all their time away from focusing on what they need to prepare for in the classroom. So we know that that is an issue that we have struggled with over the last couple of years. Last year, we came to you and we had asked you for the approval to go ahead and raise our rates, which had fallen quite a bit below the market. And we had raised our rates from, I believe it was $110 a day to $140 a day. And then following that, we did find that immediately after that, I mean, that went into effect the first week of December. And between January and May, we had hired 11 new subs. So, 11 new teacher subs, so that seemed to have some positive impact. I don't know that it was directly related to the pay, but it's more subs than we have hired in, a while. We're also now we were coming out of COVID, we're able to do a little bit more promotion and getting people more attracted to apply, because they're not as fearful of going into the work environment, which was a really big deterrent to recruitment in 2021, 21, 22. It really seemed to start to be less of a deterrent in 22, 23, but it really started to show like more of a return to normal dynamic in our recruitment in 23, 24. So we know that in terms of the market right now, where we fall as far as price is concerned, we're about the middle of the road. Just about everybody around here, and certainly to the west of us, and to the Waukesha area, with the exception of the super large districts, are paying about $140 to $150 a day for short-term subs. We have, I don't have any fresh data to work off of yet. School year hasn't started yet, so we don't know what we have coming on deck in terms of our need for substitutes, but we anticipate that it will be significant. Most districts in this area, it's a monthly topic on the HR directors meetings in the southeastern and the central South organizations, and we're constantly monitoring each other for how can we steal your subs from you, or what are you paying, or things like that. So we know that sub shortage is an issue, and we anticipate starting out that it may be an issue for us again. So what we brought were we did a little bit of brainstorming, we reviewed like where we fall in the market. I think there's a handout there that talks about some potential ideas that we could get approval for in order to position ourselves in a super good position starting out. And of course, that is going to include the idea of an increase to the daily rate. I mean, we do know from past surveys and past discussions with substitute teachers that they are somewhat price sensitive. Certainly the survey data that we had collected in 2022 said that if you increase those pay rates, I will work more. We also know that former WUSD educators are a super good source of potential substitutes. We are prohibited from talking with any of them during the 75-day waiting period while they meet their eligibility requirement for WRS. But one of the things that we've already started talking about is, reaching out to that pool of people a little bit more assertively than we have in the past. We have mentioned in passing, which is all that we can do under the current legal requirements for WRS. We can't talk about bringing them back as subs while they're still here in their last year. We can't make any proposals, we can't do any invitations. All we can say is basically, we know that a lot of WUSD educators like to come back after they've met their 75-day waiting period. So what we're talking about doing a little bit more assertively now is to actually pick up the phone and start calling those people on day 76 and saying, time's up, you're eligible. Are you thinking about coming back? Great, let's reactivate you. So that is one of the strategies that we'll be using this year. We could also look at things like targeted incentives for those low fill areas, where if we know that RMS is consistently a low fill area, we would need to set some defined thresholds in terms of what constitutes being low enough to trigger eligibility for any incentive that is designed along those lines and then set up either a bonus or a enhanced daily rate or something like that to attract people into those positions a little bit more easily or more effectively. So those are some of the things that we had talked about. We do feel like we have a little bit of room to grow in terms of some of these attempts, like increasing even. The guy put 165, but it could be 155. I mean, we could go with something like that and see, you know, is that drawing some of these local subs over from Johnson Creek or from Dodgeland or places like that. So.
Questions?
Something that comes to mind when, we're thinking about, like the daily increase rate and some of the incentive things and stuff like that we've done. So I've been on HR, so, watched through the process the last few years. As far as that goes, I know, a difficult thing was that, okay, so we're, the Paris, for example, had this extra bonus and that was, bumping right up to the rates as far as, regular full-time employees. So I'm wondering as far as like, if we're looking at certified teachers, if you're looking at bumping up the daily rate, then does that bump the long-term sub rate, which is typically more? And how close does that get us to like starting teachers and you know what I mean? Just as far as like, what is the consequence of how that works up the ladder there?
So the long-term rate, we did not adjust when we did the increase to 140. It remained at 200.
Okay,
And that's where it's at today.
okay,
If we increase to like one, I think it would depend on the amount of the increase, which would kind of inform, do we want to also do a corresponding increase to long-term subs? Long-term subs are generally seen as better assignments because they are by definition long-term. It's usually to cover a person who is out on an extended medical leave, most often on maternity leave. And so people come in and they know that I'm for the next 2 or 3 months, I am the classroom teacher for second grade at Webster. And so they get a couple of days to work with that individual that's going out on leave. And then they essentially have a very dedicated assignment. They're not floating around trying to figure out, what the staffing plan or what the substitute plans are or things like that. They're more or less, to the extent possible, folded into the building culture and into the certified staff as best as we can. So, I mean, we've included some of those long-term subs and things like PD that's applicable to the day that they are, to the time period that they're working and things like that. So long-term subs aren't as much of a recruitment challenge as the short-term, and particularly the one-dayers. The day of are the worst. The longer the earlier somebody puts a vacancy in, this is anecdotal observation of our systems. The earlier people put an absence in, the sooner it gets picked up, and the more it gets to the day of. That's where we have the low fill rates. So if people are calling in sick unexpectedly for a day or two, and those are the ones that in the last minute are really hard to fill. If somebody knows that they're going out for knee replacement surgery or something for a couple weeks, and it is only a couple weeks lately, I've heard, then they put in, 6 or 8 weeks or 3 months in advance, and those sub assignments get picked up more regularly. So part of it is a function of like how quickly do we have to have turnaround on filling the sub.
Diana?
Can I switch topics a little bit? Or are we still on? Okay. I'm curious, two major things, not major, bigger things right now. Why are we only looking at January, February, March? Is there a significance to that window?
We can pull it.
Okay.
We can
No,
pull
I
it.
just didn't know if there was a significance there.
Well, we can't just
Usually we
aggregate it without pulling
No,
it
that's
out.
okay. I didn't know if that was a higher.
No,
because
it's
as
just a sample.
As I'm looking at that, March is always interesting to me because of spring break. And the week of spring break, there were 107 absences in that week. 35 of them came the day before break. So I'm curious if, like when I was teaching, we had policies for absences. You could not be absent the day before a vacation. Just, I don't know what the policies
We
are
do.
here. If you have, on your third day of a consecutive absence, you had to have a doctor's excuse. If it was I mean, I don't know if those are things that are typically here. So if those are all things we've already enacted, then I'm looking at, okay, is there a reason why the numbers are higher? You know, I don't want to say a mental health or whatever, because I know that there's some staff that have talked to me about that. But when I look at Phil, I know that there's people that say, I will not go to RMS because the behaviors are horrendous. I will not sub there. I will not this. And when I look at, you can get WHS at 100% fill rate, you know, but I know there's retired teachers that come back and, you know, so there's different, it's culture, it's rapport, it's other things there that, yeah, I like some of the short-term kinds of things that we can do, but if we're not fixing the root cause, we're not fixing the problem. So I would like to, and we're not gonna do it today, but I would like to propose that we start to investigate some of the root cause pieces to why is there a smaller sub pool there? Because frankly, there are people that will never sub in a middle school because subbing in the middle school is worse than high school or elementary. Middle school is a different beast. They are. Some people love it. I loved it. It's just, it depends where it is, but if you go into a teacher that doesn't have a huge or a good structure to begin with, it's a nightmare. You're fresh meat. So it doesn't solve the problem of what do we do for the teachers giving up their time? That's a huge issue. Teachers having to sub for one another. I don't know if there's a way to fix that right now without at least honoring them and saying, okay, here's an extra whatever per hour for this year is a short-term thing, investigate the problem, whatever. I don't want to stay at there's other things.
Craig?
I agree with much of what Diana just said. I think that, but I also take a step back and I also wonder, okay, there's a lot of teachers in general. If we're gonna look at that from that perspective. There's teachers that want to teach in the high school. There's teachers that want to teach in the elementary, and there's teachers that want to teach in the middle school. That's what they're designed for, that they know that this is where they want to be. And they love that age group of kids. So me, I'm tending to believe that it's more of a cultural behavioral issue when it comes to dealing with um, um, that environment. And some people say it's like being thrown to the wolves, you know, and there's just lack of support. And even among seasoned teachers that are required to be on the rotation, to be put into a different department, those challenges are still there. So what needs to change? I think, we just, at the HR committee, we heard some steps in which the administration is trying to take to try to deal with some of those things. I'd like to see how that works. But I still support the incentive pay that for the middle school until that improves. The comment via email once said, if it's truly about dollars, then give them a choice today to be a sub in the most needed role, tomorrow for a premium. And if somebody places them at 7:15 the next morning, well, that could be a challenge too. But that seems to be another solution. Allow a choice for which somebody would be able to sub anywhere in the district where the greatest need is at a premium. And maybe that's that extra incentive there.
And I want to make sure we don't get down solutionizing for them, because I know Margaret's got a bunch of things in play here. I do wanna know, I wanna ask, the rates that you set, do you have to have them posted? How quickly can you change the rates?
So the rates, when we changed them last time, we did it on the recommendation of the HR committee. Jared had attended and the HR committee had endorsed the recommendation to increase and also implement a paraprofessional bonus program, and we went live with that by the time the board meeting went live.
But my question is if they're, so. I've had, I have some background in public transportation industry. And they have a theory, the thing there they call variable pricing. So parking at noon is more expensive than it is at 6 p.m. because that's the high demand areas. You have a set rate. If there is, if you had the capability to do variable pricing and say, you know, if you want to be at the middle school and we're going to give you same day notice, it's this amount. If we give you, if it's at the elementary school and it's 2 day notice, it's this amount. And you have that capability within that. Is something that you could adjust on the fly like that?
So,
Or
I mean, what I'm thinking is that we'll need to, first of all, define what the minimum threshold for eligibility is. Like, is it 70% that then triggers premium pay? Is it 80%? And so that would be the first step, that we would have to put a little work group together here to make some decisions, set up the criteria for what exactly constitutes a situation where we would implement incentive pay. And then set up a mechanism after that to monitor our absences a little bit more in a real-time basis. I mean, Jamie does do this. She gets up at 5:30 every morning to, verify how many vacancies we have and where we're at. And then that activates like a sub-calling routine and things like that, but then adjust our messaging when we're making those calls that this vacancy is eligible for premium pricing. And this isn't, I mean, this is done in healthcare. I didn't know this anecdotally. I have a daughter who's a CNA at the Mayo Clinic up in Eau Claire, and she was just telling me this week that, her schedule unexpectedly changed, and she said she might pick up some hours, but she's gonna wait for a premium tax. And I said, why? And she said, because if you go premium tax, they'll pay a $50 bonus and double time, and they won't float you. So I'm like, oh, okay. She said, otherwise, if I sign up for extra shifts, then I might get floated out to Bloomer or to Menominee or something like that, something that is not a satisfier for CNAs. So it, like, and I guess in my mind, just having had that recent conversation with her and seeing how money motivates her pretty well, I think. It's like, I'm envisioning something along those lines. Like, we get to a certain threshold in a certain time period and we say, yep, premium pay. And then the text and we have an auto caller that is used through Frontline. Then that starts activating. Hey, we've got premium pay assignments available if you're here within 2 hours, 3 hours, half day, like that. And then that's how we pay. I mean, once it's set up, we have the capacity to adjust the compensation or the profits.
Yeah, so I think these are really great ideas. I think the idea of that variable model is really clever. However, I do want to ask, if you implement a system where after a certain period of time you get a premium, will that incentivize, kind of like what you were talking about, will that incentivize people to just wait until the last minute? So would it maybe be better to, if someone, say like the knee surgery thing, if they announce it 3 months beforehand, there is no premium that will come with it, it would only be for those short-term notice
Right.
Spaces that open up?
But, well, I mean, the risk to that is it's a roll of the dice then. I mean, we do have subs that like to work regularly and they like to know what the assignment is going to be. So like in the case of the knee surgery, somebody else that'll stay out there vacant until somebody picks it up. And might pick it up and then that whole opportunity is gone. So I mean, it is something of like, do I wait and see on that day if premium pay is enacted or not? Or do you, because like the model that I was describing is premium pay is activated on a day. It's not, you don't know if it's coming that day or not, and so that's where we would need to enhance our monitoring like we do it on a daily basis, but it might be on a 2 or 3 time a day basis, just to check, like, are we stacking up to look like we're going to have to implement premium pay? And then we would likely implement that the day of.
Gotcha, yeah, so it wouldn't be for those long-term
No.
thing, it would be more of a day by day.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha, okay, cool.
That sounds
And-
good. No.
Second, what's kind of pool, do you have for, retired WSD teachers? How big of a pool is that?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
And my thought here is that, you put forth the idea of moving from 140 to 165. And you keep the $25, is it more beneficial to keep it at 140 and offer the WSD retirees 50? Or, and keep the flat rate, but if you,
And then increase the incentive.
increase the incentive for people who are already here in town ideally. And, already don't have to, for those short-term ones, they don't have to get used to it. They know where they were. Maybe there's a better benefit there.
I think we should first though look and see, are the majority of them at the high school already where there isn't any?
Yeah, again, that's why I said,
So,
what does
you
the
gotta
pool
look-
look like? Yeah. David, Craig.
To your earlier point, I'd love to sit here all night and talk about reverse auctions and bidding
Correct.
on et cetera. But that's based off of the entire assumption. And I think those are all great ideas. Point is, it's not our position to solve those.
Yeah.
I am interested in trying to understand that all the solutions brought forward so far have a dollar in front of them. There's a dollar sign in the solution. And Diana touched on some of them. Is it the job satisfaction? What are the conveniences? What are the perks? What's the culture? Have we explored referrals? Have we discussed what our eligibility requirements are? I don't want to say lower the bar, but can we increase the pool? And I want to know what other levers have been explored that don't involve a dollar sign, or as Diana asked, why are we in the position we're in? Because any of those 5 or 6 items don't have a dollar sign in front of them. I mean, you could throw in a free lunch and entice people. You could give them the premium hours. I'm not, this is not our position. I agree with Fred wholeheartedly. Our job as a board is not to try to come up with 50 solutions in the next 2 hours and then implement them. That's your job. You're explaining to us the problem, and I want to make sure we understand the problem.
Yeah.
And if we don't understand the problem, we're going hell bent on trying to throw more money at people, and that may not be the problem. So I want to make sure that you and the administration understand the problem and ask those questions. I don't know what other questions need to be asked. I only came up with, maybe they don't like the commute. Maybe they need a preferred locker room. I don't know no idea. But I don't want to assume that a dollar is going to make a difference. It might, but we don't know that. We're not in a position to even assume that that's the case. So I don't want to get too far down one rabbit hole, but I love the idea of the bid. The bid system is a great idea. I just don't want to go there.
There are areas that we have, I mean, DPI did lower the qualifications for substitute teacher eligibility to an associate degree. And in doing that, we did recruit amongst our paraprofessionals that we would work with them to facilitate the substitute training and provide the professional development they needed to qualify for to apply for the license. Although this has a cost associated with it, if they worked 5 shifts as a substitute teacher, we reimbursed them the $125 license fee, which, I mean, 125 doesn't sound like a lot, but to some of the paraprofessionals that are working part-time hourly positions at $15 or $16 an hour, I mean, that is a significant cash outlay for them. So, I mean, we have done that. we have, tapped into just about anyone that we think is eligible in the district that might qualify for a substitute license. I myself, who I would be kind of scary, have a substitute license, but you would not want me in a classroom. So just to be very clear, but,
Unless it was an HR class, then.
unless it's an HR class, that is true. So, so we are doing some of those things. In 2022, we did do focus groups at the end of the year to find out a little bit more about what people liked about working here. There were things that we fixed after that. One of the things that was a really big complaint out of both of the secondary schools was I can't get into people's Google Classroom. So we had worked with the tech department to facilitate some way that they could then access the online classroom materials, which have become a substantial part of a teacher's toolkit these days. So we have addressed some of those cultural issues. The survey that we did also did say that if you increase pay, I'll work more hours. So I mean, that was one component of it. The things that Diana talked about too, we talked about forming work groups where we can go in and talk to subs from a specific area to say, what is it that keeps you coming here? And then also look at, you know, boots on the ground, review with our administrators at the building. What is it that you're doing with your subs when they walk through the door? And, you know, do they have to scurry around trying to figure out who do I talk to or is someone there expecting them? Thank you, Mr. Sub. We've been expecting you. Here's your sub plans for the day. Your room is right down there. I'm your contact person, those types of things. So we're working with our groups on that type of culture dynamic that goes along with other cultural things that we're trying to like enliven what other.
Craig?
I mean, I think it might be the best thought, I guess, that, okay, I'm gonna only mention action steps 1 through 3 because,
We're doing for.
oh, okay. But one through,
No, we're not doing 4.
you are doing,
We are gonna go ahead and do 3. I mean, that's like a non.
okay. I personally I like the action, the second action. Simply until we kind of get an idea of what might or may not be going on. Especially in those times of the year where it can be a challenge. So in lieu of us having answers, perhaps there needs to be a premium to get those particular positions filled for the short term, or an incentive for that. So I do kind of appreciate the effort that was put in place on that thought.
Tina?
Kind of on my list, were kind of some of the intangibles that David had mentioned as far as, you know, like what kinds of feedback did we get, you know, from subs as far as that goes? You know, is there, you know, maybe like a mentor system, you know, set up like, oh, okay, you know, I'm the sub mentor for the day or for this person or whatever. Hey, wanted to check in. How you doing? When I was a substitute, I found that to be very valuable and welcoming. Like, oh my gosh, people, you know, were so helpful. I think too, as far as, you know, just kind of thinking of kind of just throwing other things out there. You know, as far as like student behavior is concerned, I mean, I totally get that. There was something recently, and I'm so sorry, I cannot remember specifics. There was something recently that we were going over and RMS had like significant improvements. I cannot remember what it was. But I was
Satisfaction survey.
okay, is that what it was? Okay. But I'm like, okay, behavior referral, something like that. Okay. But because we don't pull out specific building data, we had no way of knowing that. Or at least I didn't see that information. So when someone just kind of made an offhand comment about that, I'm like, you know what, that would be, I mean, hey, okay, that gives me a glimmer of hope. You know, and yeah, I mean, I get the whole, you know, pay thing as far as that goes. I kind of have on my list, like include lunch for them, that kind of thing. But I know it's one of those, small things.
Just not to
Oh.
be negative about lunch,
No.
because we'd like to give out free lunch, but there are USDA requirements as far as federal funding in terms of giving out
They
free
don't get
lunch
free
to
lunches.
staff.
Teachers have to pay for their lunches.
Okay, well, yeah,
Yeah.
I know they
See,
do.
this is why I
Okay.
like this meeting, because this is the stuff I don't know.
That's good. Yeah, who would have known?
Seems a little rigid to me too.
But I mean, administration could give them, here's $5 for your lunch or whatever, you know what I mean? So I mean, there's probably a workaround, I'd imagine. I'm just saying.
Don't talk work.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay focused.
I just say our
Right,
nutrition services.
Right.
Yeah,
No free lunch.
Yeah.
we heard earlier tonight that, our district doesn't do punitive measures. A one-day sub is different than a regular teacher. And so if, I think we have to treat subs differently and they need more administrative support.
Mhm.
And what I've heard from, subs recently is that, they didn't feel like they got it at the middle school. In fact, it was just the opposite. And, we used to have a program called the Blue Slip program, and you probably heard me say that before, but it was a program that worked. And the subs were given blue slips, and they could, give that to a kid, or they could threaten the kid with it. And that usually stopped behavior because they didn't want to have to serve the punitive detention. And that was, really the only recourse that they gave to subs. And the teacher said that it did work. And we used to have Friday night after school detentions. And that worked. And the teachers loved it and the kids hated it. You want to get out of school on the weekend, but you're sitting in a detention room. And it's not just totally punitive. I mean, there's some relationships building between who's ever supervising it and talking to them. So I think we need to treat discipline with subs differently.
And I like the thought of discipline, but also what you started with is support
Yeah.
for the subs. Tina?
I don't know what this looks like or anything like that, but I mean, is there a way like to utilize parent volunteers, not as subs? Okay, let's not go there. But hey, there's a parent volunteer in the building this day, maybe there's extra classroom support that the volunteer can give in some way.
We've recruited parents for subs. We've sent out flyers home with kids and sent out skylers to try and entice parents to join our sub ranks.
Sure. Oh, well, yeah, which I totally understand. But I'm talking like when if you have a pool of volunteers, parent volunteers, and like, hey, I'm gonna go in and okay, yeah, back in the day it was like, okay, I'll go in and I'll help, Johnny with his math. He's got some corrections and we'll work together on that. And then I'll make copies for this teacher and I'll do, whatever, those kinds of things. And like I said, I don't know what that looks like, but I don't know.
Set of eyes on the kids.
If that,
Yeah, a little bit more
yeah, because
authority.
sometimes it helps when you
That
have,
makes sense.
yeah,
Like a sub.
it's another form of
Para-
support
subs.
Yeah.
as parent volunteers. It doesn't have to be every day. They don't, I don't know, like I said, I don't know what that looks like, but that just kind of, I don't
Would
know.
alleviate a lot of burden, yeah.
Second, when you talk subs, are you lumping, is paras part of that or is that a separate discussion?
So for the purposes of this discussion, it was my understanding we're talking only about teachers.
Okay, all right, good. Well, so I just want to see, did you have any questions?
No, I know,
Spoken.
I just wanted to kind of have a comment off of what Dan was saying. I'm actually surprised at the high school because from what I've heard from students is that the minute there's a substitute in there, these kids just act poorly. And so I was surprised that the high school is doing as well as they are. Honestly, seeing that my son's a high school student and it's very frustrating. So I agree that there's definitely more to making sure that we're getting some support.
Craig?
So what I think that kind of hits on is that maybe behaviors are still probably an issue, not just at the middle school, but also at the high school. Um, I like Tina's thought process though too, where, yeah, maybe we aren't tapping into parents enough in a way. And it also goes back to like the lunch situation, sorry. But like maybe that sort of thing could be like the PTO is gonna buy you lunch today. It compliments of PTO.
Well, you
You
gotta
know.
talk to the PTO on that. They're
Right,
very
right.
Specific where the money goes.
Right,
Yeah.
but maybe
The
also
idea there.
Yes, it's a
Putting
good
that
idea.
idea out there.
without the other idea with after Friday after detentions or as a consequence of behaviors. If something like that were to materialize, maybe the PTO can help us with providing a transportation voucher if that's a problem. You know, those are those little things that I think we can kind of try to help with those solutions.
So what I'm hearing here is, that the board is open to fresh ideas on making solutions to this and having that discussion. With, Margaret's got a good start here with these 4 items and that, coming at this with ideas that are beyond pay increases on ways to not only maintain subs, but attract subs. And this would include, different ways of, novel ways of doing pay. Especially for those where we know that, when a teacher calls in at the middle school and you need someone that day, that's gonna be the lowest, or gonna be the hardest one to fill. But is there a way we can make that the most enticing one? Things like that. Is that kind of the general consensus I'm getting here? And that, we also understand that subs need more support because they're subs. And especially those that do not have a history in our district.
And specifically support to administer consequences when students are not cooperating, because that is a huge issue.
Mhm.
Most of the subs that I talked to over the past year, that's been one of the main focal points for them.
So Margaret, how much, I'll get there, how much interaction do the deans, and I know we're putting a dean in at the high school, interaction with the deans have with the subs? Because the deans are, lack for a better term, are enforcers at the schools.
So, I mean, the high school is just starting their dean role, the associate principals, I would really need to check with them, Fred, in terms of what their role is as it relates to some.
Okay.
Just in the same way that I didn't want to jump on the dollar bandwagon, but I believe that that's a significant contributor, and also the culture and the support. Once again, we don't know all the solutions, but I believe that it's probably a significant contributor. Would that fall to Jenny and Ed Services for an update to figure out how to support that? Where would you like that to reside? Because we don't have Jared here, we don't have Jenny here, we don't have Sarah here, and yet somewhere that's got to trickle down, but that's tech. I mean, and I know he's here on behalf of, and Sarah's online too, and so is Margaret. I'm not saying we don't have top level staff here. I'm saying is that if we wanted to not add a position, but change a description and a focus of a group of people we already employ, I presume that would come through Jared and or through, like you said, the deans or the principals or the team leads. I don't know if that's what they call them up in the high school, right, Dan? I mean, like Pam Suski or whatever. That's a team lead in the math department. I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking, Fred, when you give direction or when they listen to the meeting minutes, who gets that action item? It's not Margaret, and that's not necessarily her department.
So I'm wondering if I could take these suggestions back to our central office team and when Jared gets back, and that we formulate a plan that includes not only the compensation piece, but also how are we going to address what we believe to be a significant building culture issue? and just get a little bit more information at each of those levels, like this is how we do it, this is where we need to set some best practices, what are those? What are we doing within each of our buildings to make sure that people, that subs feel a part of the team, are welcomed and have the resources and support that they need in order to feel like this is an assignment that I can handle and that I have the authority and the responsibility to effectively do my job.
Yeah, you already read my mind. I was gonna say that this is a cabinet discussion.
Perfect. And then I would just want to say that it doesn't necessarily automatically come back to HR. I mean, I'm not gonna say presumably it comes back to ed services, but it could come back to policy. It could come back to I don't want to let the ball drop and let it just fall back to HR and have the same issue a year from now. And I know that run it to ground isn't something we even do that effectively, and even the committees, because a lot of things take a long time to get from A to B. But I want to make sure this has a home, and if it's culture, and if it's a buddy system, if it's, hey, if you know, me and Lynn are both subs and we both show up every single day that we're called, we get an extra $5 because we have a buddy system. I mean, I don't care what it is, but it may not just be HR, and somebody's got to own it.
I will say that if we, we got 8 people here. Margaret, take this back to Jared, and Jared's got to feel strong enough about a proposal, bring it to the full board. He doesn't have to give it to a committee,
Okay.
bring it to the full board. And if the board decides, look, we think this isn't fully baked, and as a board, we can decide that it can go to a committee and at that point. But I figure, you know what, if you've got a plan, you want to put this in place and you think this is going to address the situation, come right to us. I mean, we're all here right now, so I don't see a reason not to.
Well, make sure Margaret's got direction.
Yeah, I do.
It hasn't.
Sam?
If it's multi-pronged, you could also send it to more than one committee, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, we could, we could, say, we could create a subcommittee of members of those committees and then go from there too. We got a lot of different ways we can handle it. But my point is, you got a good idea and you think this is worthwhile, bring it to the board, right to the next board meeting. So. All right, other questions? Thoughts? Margaret, you got other things for us?
No, I think I understand the direction.
Now, I'm gonna ask you this, because, Tina was good, she hit on time, so we're still here in our first hour on this. Do you feel there is a need to have a similar discussion on Paris?
I guess I would say that we should incorporate that in as a subsection of the work that's done, because they seem to go together. And some of our paras and some of our subs are serving in both roles. So there's enough of a nexus between the two that I think we should just put them out and just, if we have to differentiate, we would do that within the terms of the plan.
And I don't think, for the most part, the ideas that have been presented here tonight, I think they can apply unilaterally. There's a few, but I think most can do that. Craig and Tina.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate that this is something that administration has taken some time to explore. And I think that's gonna speak volumes to our staff, that we're really concerned that we want to actually move forward with something that's going to be meaningful to fix this issue. So I would encourage the hard work to continue, and thank you for that.
Tina?
2 things. I very much appreciate that we're having this discussion, because it's been a struggle, and it's come up at HR committee, and it's just like, oh my gosh, when we get in the thick of, like the January to March or December to March, I think is those, just critical rates, and like, we have to have staff in there, and so it's just been, suffering for, a couple of years. And so we noticed that was a pattern. So I appreciate us having that larger discussion. The second item, I did not see on here, and I just kind of want this out there as like, okay, yep, this is what it is. I did not see on here building subs. Now, I know that is something that we had done in the past, but then it was brought up, and it seems as though, yes, it was effective, but it comes at quite a price tag. And so is the price tag is what's holding us back? Like, other solutions. I just wanted to put that out there as a discussion item, so it's out there.
And Margaret, jump in here, but the last conversation I had with Jared on it, price tag's the biggest issue there, that we could put a dedicated sub in each building, but that's gonna be cost prohibitive.
Well, Sarah, did you do the costing on that?
Yes, I did, and there is a range depending on what benefits somebody would elect, but for a building sub, it would be roughly $60,000 to $80,000 per building sub. So that really is the main factor, is the cost, and that is not something that's been built into the budget for this year for 2024-25. So those would be additions to the budget.
So one of the other things that we did know when we had building subs, was that we took 3 of our subs that were, heavy attendees off the sub roles, and we put them into, regular full-time positions with benefits, but we did not necessarily immediately backfill those. So it was really just converting people that had worked, a lot anyhow. And to be clear, they liked, the 3 that were received that. We did also have one year where we had a building sub who was unfortunately out on a leave, on the teacher's own leave for most of the school year, which we tried to fill the sub.
Great.
Thank you.
I just kind of curious, Sarah, if you had been able to run the numbers when it comes to this action number 2 at $190 a day for a sub premium pay, so to speak, over the course of the year, because I don't see in the samples that we received that there was a single day that went by where there wasn't a sub needed in the building. If you're able to run that $190 per day through the course of the year, what does that dollar amount come to? I mean, is it close to that 60,000, 80,000? What are we talking about?
So you're saying if it was $190 a day for one sub for like 170 student days, maybe? Is that what you mean?
Correct.
Yeah, so
Right,
I mean that's $32,300.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's not just RMS, that's district-wide, correct? So we're looking, that's just RMS, 190 is just RMS.
Right. Well, and the question is geared toward, does it make sense to offer a sweetened package like this versus a full-time sub at 60,000, which you can concede that potentially a full-time sub can remain as a full-time sub without additional benefits as well. So I don't know, maybe that idea can still be explored. That we can offer a full-time sub position, but potentially without benefits.
Yeah, but at a certain point, we have to give them benefits.
I don't know.
Well,
Right.
we do have to pay WRS. I mean, if people
Right.
are benefit eligible. And then, Jamie, do we have ACA eligibility thresholds for teachers? I see you on the line.
Yes, there would be the FLSA rules for the teacher subs as well. So they would have to be benefit eligible because they'd be working more than 30 hours a week.
Okay.
Jamie Fisher is our payroll and benefits guru and knows all this. Thank you, Jamie.
Another good question.
Well, thank you for clearing that up, though. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
No, I too thought the building sub, but then you look at where the biggest problems are. One sub doesn't take care of
Yeah.
the problem. Yeah, I'm thinking RMS, one sub doesn't even fix that hole. At the elementary school, one building sub are outstanding. But we've got a bigger problem right now. Maybe that's a conversation down the road we can explore.
And again, and I think that's part of the conversation that Margaret wanted to have with, the cabinet staff and Jared is that whole discussion on is it one person? If we put 10 people in there, but they're not getting the support, they're not gonna last, we're back where we are. You know, what are the supports, what are the other things that need? Because again, it sounds like each elementary, the middle and the high school, they have different needs at each one of those. I mean, let's not forget that it's 85% fail rate at the elementary and it's 100 at the high school. There's still a 15% gap there. I know we're happy with what we're getting at the elementary, but there's still a 15% gap there. And so,
just from a like bigger universe, sub-universe perspective. So there are a number of private contractors that will, solicit our business for, like, if we go to teachers on call or EduStaff is one that's up and coming, where essentially the subs are considered employees of that individual agency, and then we pay a premium, like a temporary help agency premium in order for them to fill. Their current service model says that they have met a satisfactory fill rate at 85%. So that's like their deliverables to an organization. So they will say, we'll fill your sub vacancies and we'll commit to an 85% vacancy rate or fill rate.
and Jared has said as much in conversation with him is that, 80% or better, it's great. And so he's happy with that. So.
Right.
But is that district wide or building specific? Because
I have not entered into discussions with those vendors.
Okay.
We, there's some drawbacks to entering onto teachers on call because then they get to see a lot more vacancies that are all over. These, like, we cultivate a one-to-one employer relationship with them so that we know they're ours and they know that we know they're ours, our employees, Whereas teachers on call is more, if Lake Mills and Johnson Creek and Fort and everybody else is using them, you just go in and get your menu, pick your district, pick your school. And with us, it's a little bit more contained in terms of our opening.
so
You mentioned in the past that there's an app that they can use. Is that Teachers on Call? Is that the app?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they can, it's like Uber. I can take whatever one I want. It's going to give me the best price.
yeah, and that, I guess that's my other question is, I mean, regardless of that tool, we still probably want to be able to figure out the best perhaps incentive for them to want to be.
And yeah, and had that conversation, it being competitive.
Yeah.
Can I switch the topic?
Sure.
We've talked a lot about overall subs. We still have the issue of teachers subbing during their prep hours. And I think that warrants some conversation around this table. They're coming back to school here in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a real problem as they come back in 2 weeks. So are we going to have a potential solution? Are we going to be in movement toward a solution? It was clear they weren't very happy with where they were before. And so I'm just hoping that we can at least move down the pathway toward something. I don't think we're going to decide something tonight, but at least can we start that discussion now to see potential possibilities.
So Margaret, you want to cue that up?
And we'll include that on the discussion.
So just as part of the discussion tonight, is there anything else you can add to that?
So, we do know that when teachers essentially what they call sell their prep, then they are paid at what will come out to $25 an hour, which is our curriculum pay rate. It goes in increments of 12 minutes up to 90 minutes. The maximum that you can get for giving up a period is $37.50. So that extra pay is recorded through a reporting mechanism between each of the individual schools and Jamie Fisher. But that is right now the rate that has been specified as special compensation within the certified staff handbook. If we were going to change that, we would need some type of board action to say that we were able to change that. We could change it. We could look at, there's a couple of different things. We could look at what's the hourly rate for our our starting teacher pay, and I can calculate that real quickly, or we can say each individual teacher is contracted at a base salary rate. We can reduce that annual base salary rate to an hourly basis. And we can pay based on your individual hourly rate. I mean, we have the capacity to do that.
Yeah, but I think what Diana's getting to, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is this isn't necessarily about the money, it's about the time and them giving up their time that they need for prep, and they're being asked to do this or told that they need to do this,
It's
you
both.
know.
I mean, at $25 an hour, that's, I mean, you think about what a regular sub gets. We've increased regular sub pay, minimum wage at Walmart, at different places, $15, $18, $20 an hour. Yet this is time, like you said, this is time that they're giving up for preparing for their day. They don't know it until the morning they get there. Oh, by the way, you don't have prep today.
So,
But I'm not saying it has to be their hourly rate. It's just 25 to me is minimal. If it went up to 35, if it was something, at least it's showing a step in our direction to say, we're trying. We're not there yet. Here's a little something. It doesn't fix the problem until we have a root cause to fix the problem. We need solutions to fix the problem, but at least we can show somehow that we're appreciating.
so the minimum rate, the hourly rate for a new teacher, the minimum of our certified teaching schedule, which is $47,183.26. If you reduce that to an hourly basis, the hourly rate is 34.07. So, and we're paying 25, just to add to your point.
Thank you. So it's just a suggestion, just to talk about what can we do as.
How much time do they get to prepare? Like, what's their notice? They walk in that morning, they go, by the way, you're out of,
Yeah.
and they don't get to make that decision. Who makes that
Well,
decision?
I mean, they always take volunteers first.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear about that. There are some people like at RMS that do like to fill in and the extra compensation as it is right now is enough to incentivize them to give up their prep. But then they will go, if they cannot get volunteers, then they will implement the mandatory rotation. And that's kept in the office and updated on a daily basis.
How does that get chosen?
It's basically the whole staff, including the administration.
They have a big wheel.
They have a very large spreadsheet that tracks everyone.
It's color coded.
They might use a bill, Fred, I don't know, I will go over tomorrow and
I
find
can
out.
give you a website, you put everybody's name in and it gives you a big wheel, you push the button, it'll
It's
spin.
like the random bill spinner.
Yeah,
That doesn't put you on a rotation, that's just chance.
that's still. Craig,
That might be off topic.
I mean, that's important stuff, important conversation to have, but, it's my understanding, there were times where, this year where you would find an administrator in the classroom as well. And that concerns me in the sense that there are other aspects of the district work that's not getting done, whether it's, behavioral issues or, just regular administrative work. We gotta fix the problem also.
Just to be clear, administrators do not get some pay, so they do not get extra pay.
And administrators aren't on a regular rotation, they're emergency.
Right.
No, they are on a regular.
They're on the regular.
I know.
And
It's
I
pretty
agree,
regular.
they shouldn't be on a regular rotation.
Instructional.
I mean, it was pretty regular, I know. That's the right
there are
system.
deans,
Teams, instructional coach
our
are also, they're all folded in
assistant principals, everybody's folded in
at RMS.
at RMS.
Yes.
All right,
I think WHS uses a more informal approach to fill theirs, and for lack of a better description, it's Katie Perkle's influence and persuasion. So that is.
so we don't have a unified process up for this across all of the different facilities? So it's different at each elementary too?
Yes. And it depends on the type of absence and the staff that's available. At the elementary, it might be somebody filling in to cover a couple hours in a classroom. or it could be that they split a class and they assign a class to another teacher.
Is the
Not
feeling,
that, it really is much more variable at the elementary.
I was gonna say, is it demonstrably different between the different, even if it's elementary, middle and high, is it different enough that we can't have a process that is the same, you know, like everybody uses the same kind of rotation?
I'd imagine it would be a little bit more difficult at the elementary level to have the same model because they are with the kids all day. As
Yeah.
opposed to secondary where it's per period, they can break out per period subbing
Okay,
a little bit that easier. But I would need to defer to the instructional people for their expert assessment of that.
Yeah, I think at elementary you traditionally see like a class and a half, so you split classes. And you rely on your elected teachers to help. And that's different at middle school depending on the schedule. You know, our schedule at the middle school is different. It's part elementary, part high school. That's the schedule model. And so that provides some unique challenges, and then high school is pretty pure if you're doing all call for, you know, by period who's available. So looks very different, but I think there's some commonalities of processes that would give you that.
other questions? Discussion? Margaret, hold on, Margaret, do you have anything else?
No, I appreciate I appreciate the discussion.
This has been good discussion. Like I said, this is kind of what I wanted to get here tonight, is just get this out. I mean, I've learned things, and that was kind of the intent of this. It wasn't necessarily for us to do anything. One thing I will say is, we know that this is, I don't want to say I need an answer by October or at the September board meeting or anything like that. But we know that this is a, and Jared will come back and tell me, hey, no, I need you to tell me, pick a day. But, we know that this is a priority, so this is something that, you know, the board thinks is important to look at, but I don't want to give you a specific date, you know, at this point. But if you come back to us in June and tell us that something was horrible all year, we'll say, well, we had the meeting in August. So,
I hear you.
you know,
I don't wanna, I know we're kind of trying to wrap things up as a close, but just.
no. If the
Yeah.
discussion continues, it continues.
I just, the one other thing that might be interested in finding out is how those sub shortages correlate with the transportation shortages and sports teams. Because if we're going to look at that, we need to also understand, okay, if it's a matter of our transportation needs, then we really need to start, maybe we need to be looking at that as a possible solution that needs to change also.
But I would think, are you talking bus drivers?
Yeah, because if, for instance, what would typically happen is during like a regular sports season, if there's a lack of transportation drivers, that particular sports team would have to leave at noon for a relatively local game like in Johnson Creek. Whereas normally they would be leaving closer to the end of the day. And that also requires an additional sub to fill in for that coach earlier in the day. So I guess I'm just kind of
The
curious.
coach would be leaving though, wouldn't they, anyway? What you're saying is that the drive, we had a driver, they could leave at the end of the day.
They would, yeah, that's correct.
All right.
Because a lot of the, my understanding is that a lot of the drivers are transporting them to the event and then coming back to run the route and then coming back to pick them up. So that also requires a lot of downtime of that sports team at that school in the short term. So
Just a comment to that, that was a huge issue 2 years ago. that was about 80 to 90% fixed last year.
Oh.
So that wasn't, it still happened.
Yeah, not
once
at
in a blue moon,
RMS. I think
but it-
RMS is the biggest problem.
RMS was big, because the high school, I mean, there were times that kids were leaving at noon
Yeah.
for a 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock game. That didn't happen at all last year.
Unless you're in golf, then you're.
Well, golf is typical, golf is
I
typical,
know.
that's part of the regular schedule.
I know.
But like even baseball, if it was a 5 o'clock game, they typically would leave about 2:05, 2:30, very consistently, where previously volleyball, what previously, you never knew. So that was exactly right. 2 years ago, last year was much of a more fixed. I don't know middle school, but I know high school
middle school
was
is
pretty much
Well, and that will
With the
also
bus.
pull staff from everywhere in the district, because the coach doesn't necessarily have to be, at the school where the team, the high school team could still have an elementary coach,
Mm,
yeah, all right. That's a good thought too.
I don't know how many other types of activities also require a sub to pull in. Like for instance, we've gone through a lot of other changes, like curriculum wise, where all of a sudden that schedule requires professional development during the day, which would pull in a bunch of needed subs. And how perhaps maybe that could be adjusted so that we're still supporting our staff for the needs that they have. But maybe it's broken up differently. I don't know.
Margaret, when we have like a midday need for a sub, do we are we able to pull in a sub, or do we typically have the staff cover?
Well, both, I mean, in the scenario that Craig is describing, we usually have a pretty good idea a little bit in advance, but yes, that is an area that you have heard periodically concerns about where coaches are leaving, and then we have to fill with subs, but we do post for half the vacancies too. I mean, we have that capability. Those aren't the most favorite assignments. People like if they're here, they like to stay here for the day, or they don't like coming in late into the middle of the day, but
Brings us back to variable pricing. See, right there.
right, but I mean, I don't know enough about how is it short-term transportation? I mean, I would have to check with like Jamie Kepp to see like how quickly is he getting those transportation schedules? But I think it's fairly well known, kids are getting out of class quite early, several hours in advance of what the actual need. Because that's when the transportation.
And that's not just a sub, they're losing instruction, as part of that too. All right, good point. Other items? All right, well, then, thank everybody for the discussion. We'll call it here at 8:20. Can we have a motion?
Is there something with volunteer discussion?
What?
Is there a item B on there?
What's that?
Volunteer discussion?
Oh, volunteer discussion? I didn't know that we kind of wrapped that in. Margaret, volunteer discussion, what was that?
I thought that was. I thought
I don't know, that's
that
not
was
mine.
the idea of
Oh,
parent volunteers.
Oh.
I do know that like there are some areas where volunteers are not as heavily recruited right now, especially as we get Act 20 training underway and we figure out what we're doing there and how to best use volunteers. The AVID program at RMS would love to have more volunteers. So those are two areas that if we work on any type of enhancement of our volunteer programs, we would look at particularly at the RMS AVID program to place individuals. And we have had volunteers come into AVID and work with our kids at RMS. So.
And that's what's keeping us from a district-wide AVID program right now, is we're on that mentoring piece.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I think the communication on that could be a little bit more rigorous.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've been to some of the family meetings, but I've never once heard any
I'll
discussion.
pass it on.
My niece is in it.
When it comes down to
Pretty
communication.
involved,
I
but I've never heard that.
yeah.
I probably would.
I mean, last year we were paying like college students who
Really?
serve as tutors.
Yeah, I mean, even at their family meetings that they have, that would be even a great time to remind those parents and
Okay.
get the word out, siblings, whatever.
I mean,
So
I
leave
didn't
that note.
put that on there as,
I mean, I
you know, that wasn't my,
Here.
oh, okay.
Blame
That
Jared,
would,
he's not here.
I would remember that, you know what I mean?
I think it is something I know, and I don't know where parent volunteers or grandparent volunteers or whatever, I don't know where that falls right now. I know, a number of years ago now, when my kids were in elementary school, I could volunteer until my son had gotten into, I think it was fourth grade. And he had just graduated this past year and boom, they like cut out volunteers. They like didn't want any more volunteers. So I don't know if that has changed. I don't know if that's communicated to, you know, like you said, as far as like communicated to people. I don't think they asked for volunteers at the high school or when I was
Yeah,
even a
never
parent
been.
at the middle school.
Mhm.
I mean, they want to volunteer for, you know, like PTO or, you know, different groups, but as far as classroom volunteers, I mean,
And Margaret, maybe that would be a discussion with Melissa too, as far as the communication process for that, if there is one.
If that's a
Yeah.
thing that was absent, just especially at RMS, I could see where it could be helpful.
All right. We have a motion, I heard over here, David made the motion.
I did.
Good.
Second.
Got a second from Sam. All in favor?
I,
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, folks, I appreciate it.
thank you.
Good discussion.